Welcome to Monday Meditation on Psalm 119. We're in verse 173 today, where the psalmist says, "Let your hand be ready to help me, for I've chosen your precepts." You know, we live in a culture where people have expectations of God. And oftentimes, when they're in the midst of crisis, they cry out to God and they have an expectation that God owes them whatever service that they would like. That's not the picture that we see here in this verse. This psalmist is expressing his desire and his need for God's help, but he's expressing it as a man who actually desires to follow God. He says, "I've chosen your precepts." In other words, the psalmist loves God's word. He wants to live in submission to God's word. He has a relationship with God. The psalmist understands his own inadequacy. He knows that he needs God's help. And so it's in the process of living out his life, a life of dependence on God, that he expresses his need for God to help him through this life. You know, it's interesting, there's a verse that's very familiar to most in Romans 8:28, where it says that God causes all things to work together for good. And people love that part because they just want God to make things the way they think they ought to be. But it goes on to say, to those who love God, it's important to understand that there are a lot of people that claim to be Christians, but they don't love God. And the promises in the scriptures, as a general rule, are given to those who love God. And the psalmist was certainly one of those who loved God and desired his help. You know, I hope you're living a life that is consistent with God's precepts. I hope you've chosen his precepts, that they would be your guide, because it's then that you can depend on God to actually be your help when you need it. Have a great day.